At 0542 on the morning of September 1st, 1939, Oberleutnant Heinrich Bauer crouched in the shadow of a crumbling Polish farmhouse near the border village of Wielun. The mist hung low over the fields, a damp veil masking the approach of his Panzer IV platoon, but Bauer's sharp eyes pierced it. He had been awake since 0315, checking maps, coordinating signals with his radio operator, and mentally tracing every inch of the terrain the Polish defenders might exploit. Bauer, 26, a former shooting champion from Munich, had been trained at the Kriegsakademie for precision, patience, and ruthless efficiency. Unlike his subordinates, who joked about the easy war ahead, he understood the cost of underestimating an enemy. He fingered the bolt of his Karabiner 98K, the polished stock smooth under his gloved hands. Though technically just a standard-issue rifle, Bauer had spent hours fine-tuning the sights, adjusting for wind, range, and elevation, small advantages that might mean life or death in the open fields of Wielun. From his position, Bauer could see the outline of the village through the morning fog. Smoke curled lazily from chimneys, and the faint stirrings of civilians hinted at the day ahead. Somewhere in those streets, Polish defenders were preparing, likely underestimating the speed and coordination of the German Wehrmacht. Intelligence had reported a small contingent of Polish infantry, machine guns mounted in basements, and perhaps 2 concealed anti-tank positions. At 0547, the 1st Panzer IV rumbled forward, its tracks carving parallel lines into the dew-soaked earth. Bauer raised a hand, signaling his platoon to advance behind the armored spearhead. The tank's 75mm guns were ready, but their real value was psychological. Nothing roused panic like the mechanical growl of steel beasts rolling toward you in formation. Bauer moved carefully, scanning hedgerows and tree lines for movement. He had trained his men in patience and discipline. Every motion could reveal them to enemy sharpshooters. By 0603, the platoon had crossed the first wheat field without incident. Bauer counted heads, verified spacing, and adjusted formation. The village was now visible, a patchwork of red roofs and narrow streets. At this distance, Polish riflemen were indistinguishable from civilians. The sun had begun to rise, casting long shadows through the mist, and Bauer knew that any mistake, any premature shot, would reveal his position before the Panzer Division could engage fully. At 0608, a distant pop rang out, followed by a burst of automatic fire. A Polish machine gun team had opened from the edge of the village, targeting the lead tank. Bauer dropped behind a low stone wall, sighting the building where the muzzle flashes had originated. He adjusted his Karabiner 98K, estimating the range at 220 meters. He fired once. The rifle kicked sharply, and the soldier manning the gun fell, slumping over his position. Silence returned, but Bauer knew better than to relax. Every building, every window could hide another rifle, another shot waiting to find him. Over the next 15 minutes, the village became a tableau of controlled chaos. German infantry advanced methodically, tank support suppressing known strongpoints. Bauer moved through broken fences, over muddy roads, clearing houses and yards with his men. They encountered Polish riflemen in basements and attics, exchanging fire, forcing retreats, and neutralizing positions one by one. Bauer's Karabiner was precise: 6 shots, 6 hits, each calculated, each lethal. His team respected him, not for courage alone, but for discipline and efficiency. At 0635, Bauer paused near the edge of the central square. Smoke rose from a partially destroyed bakery. He could hear voices in Polish, the shouting of orders and the cries of the wounded. Across the square, a young Polish officer tried to coordinate a counterattack with a small infantry squad. Bauer calculated the distance, roughly 310 meters, and waited. Precision was paramount. A single shot could neutralize the officer, disorganizing the enemy without exposing Bauer's position. He squeezed the trigger, and the officer collapsed behind a cart. Chaos rippled through the defenders. The counterattack faltered before it could begin. By 0602, Bauer's platoon had secured the northern sector of the village. Casualties were minimal, thanks to coordination and the overwhelming speed of their advance. Still, Bauer moved cautiously, knowing Polish resistance could regroup in the southern sectors. Reports from radio operators indicated small groups of soldiers hiding in attics and cellars. Every movement was logged, every position marked. Precision and timing mattered more than brute force. At 0715, Bauer received a new assignment: secure the railway station on the far side of the village. It was lightly defended, but critical for supply lines. He led a small team, moving from cover to cover, using hedgerows and broken fences for concealment. As they approached, the smell of smoke and cordite grew stronger. Polish defenders had set fire to fuel stores and were preparing traps to slow the German advance. At 0732, Bauer spotted two Polish soldiers attempting to ambush the approaching infantry from the roof of a warehouse. He signaled to his men, adjusted for elevation, and fired once. The first soldier fell, then the second, taken by the same carefully calculated shot. Every action Bauer took was deliberate. Every bullet saved lives by preventing chaos in his platoon. By 800, the railway station was in German hands. Bauer's platoon secured it quickly, disabling communications and capturing a small cache of weapons. Civilians fled the area, watching in stunned silence as German forces consolidated their positions. Bauer allowed his men a short rest, but he remained vigilant. The first hours of the campaign had demonstrated the effectiveness of precision, training, and discipline, but he knew that resistance, even small pockets, could prove deadly if underestimated. At 8:45, Bauer received orders to push east towards the village of Kretchen, roughly 3 kilometers away. The terrain was open, with fields of tall rye and scattered farmhouses, perfect for enemy sharpshooters. Bauer led his platoon in a staggered formation, advancing slowly and methodically, checking every building for threats. Each step, each motion was calculated. The open fields offered no cover. Speed and discipline were their only protection. At 9:12, distant flashes indicated the presence of Polish snipers. Bauer raised his carabiner and observed. One sniper had positioned himself behind a broken windmill, another atop a hill with clear visibility over the fields. Bauer counted distance, wind, and exposure. He fired once. The rifle kicked sharply. One sniper fell. The other moved, adjusting position. Bauer signaled his men to advance, while maintaining suppressive fire from supporting machine guns. By 10 o'clock, German forces had pushed beyond the outskirts of Wielun, consolidating control and preparing for further advance into Poland. Bauer checked his equipment, counted his men, and reported to company command. The morning was decisive. Small groups of defenders had been eliminated, vital infrastructure secured, and the momentum of the invasion maintained. Bauer understood the broader significance of these actions. The invasion of Poland was only the beginning. Every town captured, every position neutralized, would pave the way for the Wehrmacht's rapid advance across Eastern Europe. Discipline, training, and tactical precision were as important as tanks or artillery. One miscalculation could result in unnecessary casualties, loss of momentum, or even strategic failure. By noon, Bauer allowed his men a brief respite. The sun burned off the morning mist, revealing the devastation of war: burned-out buildings, collapsed walls, and the silent bodies of those who had resisted. Bauer moved among his men, checking morale, distributing ammunition, and reinforcing the lessons of the morning. They had survived the first critical hours of the campaign, and his leadership had ensured minimal losses. As Bauer gazed eastward towards the next objective, he contemplated the larger conflict unfolding. Poland was just the opening chapter. The coming months would bring more battles, more towns, and far greater challenges. Yet in those early hours, the combination of careful planning, precise marksmanship, and disciplined leadership had proven decisive. The Wehrmacht would advance, and men like Heinrich Bauer, calculating, efficient, and relentless, would be at the forefront of a war that would engulf the continent. At 0430 hours on the morning of June 22, 1941, Oberleutnant Friedrich Weber crouched in the dark, damp forest near the border village of Przemyśl, Poland. His hands were cold, wrapped around the grip of his Mauser Kar 98K. Friedrich, 26, a veteran of the Blitzkrieg in France, had survived the campaign with 3 confirmed engagements and 0 serious injuries. The men of the 3rd Panzer Division had been briefed for weeks. Operation Barbarossa would strike at dawn. They were told it would be quick, a crushing blow that would bring Moscow to its knees before winter. The soldiers of the Wehrmacht had been trained in combat arms warfare, precise coordination of infantry, tanks, and artillery, yet none could prepare for what lay beyond the Polish border.